After almost 25,000 listens and the retirement of Mice and Men from the GCSE specification, we are back with a new season for a new WJEC spec. This is Litcast. Not a red rose or a satin heart, I give you an onion. Well, actually, I give you a new season that covers Unit 1 of the new double award English Language and Literature specification for WJEC. We're going to be going through all of the poems in the anthology and doing a little episode on their context and their themes, and then a separate episode which will hopefully have a video option where we go through some line-by-line analysis as well. We've got you covered for Unit 1 so that this anthology does not feel daunting and feels very manageable indeed. And where better to start than at the beginning? So today we will be exploring Valentine by Carol Ann Duffy. Now, the unit that you're actually studying is called Context and Meaning. So having some context around the poem can really help you understand some of the techniques, some of the meanings and the big ideas in there a little better. So let's have a little bit of a chat about Carol Ann Duffy herself. She's a contemporary Scottish poet, and she's actually known as the first female poet laureate. She actually only took the job because no other woman had had it before her. Valentine was published in 1993-94 in a collection of poetry called Meantime. Duffy is actually known for dramatic monologues and, in particular, challenging and subverting traditional ideas about love, gender and relationships. And this is going to be really important when we dive into the poem itself later. The poem is set against, as you can tell by the title, Valentine's Day, which, as we all know, is a very heavily commercialised celebration of love. And you only need to go into any shop or supermarket in the couple of weeks before Valentine's Day to see what that actually looks like. Rows of chocolates, bottles of wine, flowers, teddy bears with hearts all over them, special themed pyjamas, anything that you could stick a heart on, it's being sold for Valentine's Day. So we need to think about this poem within its context, which is the late 20th century, where we've got this increasing sense of consumerism and love being expressed as a result through products, through purchases, rather than emotional honesty or the slow, quiet, day-to-day actions of a long-term relationship. So this poem, as a result, critiques these cliched romantic gestures and therefore potentially critiques the idea that love should be this idealised, painless, sort of insta-ready emotion. So let's think about how that links into some of the big ideas or the themes within this poem. Now, your teachers will likely talk through some sort of structure or some way of thinking, some process when you go through each of your poems. And each of those are going to be slightly different, slightly tailored to yourself, your learning and your class. So I will be using the very, very broad structure of big ideas, methods and word choices, because we can use that for pretty much any text, whether that's poetry, whether that's plays, whether that's prose text. And what that really forces and encourages is precision, which is what we really want for a top band response, is that confidence and precision when talking about these texts. So when we're thinking about big ideas, we're thinking about, for this poem, love being ultimately complex and sometimes uncomfortable. It can cause pain as well as joy. It is intense, it is layered, it is lasting. There's also this almost binary opposition of romance versus the truth. There's this strong contrast between the romantic notion of love, which is all of the cliche, stereotypical declarations of romantic love, and instead kind of pushing or encouraging us to focus on the idea of true love, and true love being far more complicated than this idealized romantic notion. So the speaker values honesty in this poem over the kind of fantastical notion of romantic love. And also then rejects those superficial symbols of love, such as in the opening line, the red rose and the satin heart. They're rejecting that. There's also this sense of individuality. The onion is representing this sort of personal, meaningful gift rather than a generic one. And there's also this kind of running theme of commitment and risk. This idea of love being lethal. It permanently changes people. And if you commit, if you allow yourself to commit, there's always that risk and that danger of pain. And the proposal is uncertain, kind of towards the end of the poem, this idea of a wedding ring being mentioned. It's uncertain and it's also non-idealized. So this idea of a commitment, again, being sort of social media ready and perfect and really romantic, we need to accept that just isn't the reality of things. And that doesn't mean that love isn't amazing and something that we should desire, but the reality is very different to what we are being told, particularly from these big commercialized organizations that want us to buy things, to buy into the fantasy of this idealized romantic love. Right. Let's talk about this poem at a macro level. What are the big features, such as form or particular ways of addressing our readers, that this poem employs? So the poem could be considered a dramatic monologue and actually employs a technique called apostrophe. Not apostrophe like the punctuation mark that you use to show possession or letters missing from words, but actually apostrophe is where a speaker directly addresses someone who is unable to respond, in this case, a silent lover. So the speaker here is addressing a silent lover. And these lovers' reactions are implied. They are not stated. And there's that ambiguity there where we're not quite sure how they are taking this monologue that they're being given. It's free verse. There's no regular rhyme or meter, which in itself, because we always want to be thinking about why these things have been used, right? So when we're thinking about methods, macro or micro methods, we want to be thinking about why that's been chosen, what's the effect of that, and how does that ultimately link to that big idea. So free verse, this idea of no regular rhyme or meter, we're not following a strict structure here. It reflects that rejection of romantic convention. Now, you will likely be aware of a sonnet form, or if you are not, then you will, I'm certain, be studying one at some point in this unit. And a sonnet is usually the poem that we associate with declarations of love. It's the poetic form that is often referred to as love poetry. And that form is very, very strict in terms of the way that it's set up, the lines, the rhyming scheme, the point in which the kind of turn within the action takes place. So the fact that this is completely free is really interesting because it rejects these romantic conventions, and in doing so kind of rejects that strict adherence, that strict conformity to a very idealized sense of what love should be. So within this rejection is also a sense of freedom. There's also irregular stanza lengths, which creates this sort of hesitant, fragmented tone. And in the same way that we've got this freedom, we then also have, in the same way that the poem explores the unpredictable nature of love and the fact that it can produce happy and sad emotions, we've got here these irregular stanza lengths which could potentially mirror that instability of relationships. We've got the extended metaphor as well of the onion. So the onion represents love throughout the poem, and the way that it's used, the way that it's described is ultimately designed to show you that anything can be an object of love or a declaration of love, and actually the mundane and the everyday is sometimes the most beautiful declaration of love, but it does not come without its difficulties, it does not come without its pains and its kind of tough aspects as well. And then we also have some short imperative sentences in here, which we will look at when we do our line-by-line analysis episode. So we've got things like hear or take it, which suggests arguably some forcefulness or insecurity or emotional tension, again showing the reality of love, that it's not all this romantic idealized relationship, that actually we have some sad moments, some tense moments, and that is just a natural part of a relationship. All right, so that is a brief overview of the context and some of the big ideas in Valentine by Carol Ann Duffy. We will be exploring the context and the big ideas of all the poems in the anthology before returning to each of them in turn for some line-by-line analysis to aid with revision. By no means are these episodes completely comprehensive, but hopefully they'll give you that little bit of a boost of confidence ready for your Unit 1 exam in the summer. Thank you so much for listening. And if you found this podcast useful, then please share it with other people and be sure to leave some feedback as well. All of our episodes are free at point of use, but if you wish to support us further, then there is a Ko-fi link in the description so you can tip us. Additional funds go to a range of good causes as well. Thank you so much again for listening, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you for listening to Litcast, the podcast for GCSE and A-level revision. The music that you hear in this episode is called Galaxy and was written by Ixon, and you can find the rest of his music on SoundCloud. If you found the podcast helpful and would like to support us further, then the Ko-fi link in the description will give you an opportunity to tip us. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you in the next one.